Good morning, Fremont friends and family. I have some exciting news to share. Yesterday, I was at work, in my office, preparing for a trial, and a man from NASA, the National Air and Space Administration, passed by my office and said, "Sean, we are making plans to colonize Mars. Follow me, and I will make you a lawyer to the Martians." I immediately stopped preparing for trial, left my office without packing anything up, and headed off to Cape Canaveral in Florida with this man. I think his name was Matthew. I called my wife Corey and told her what I was doing, and she said, "Okay, I'll miss you." Now, as you surely figured out, I was not recruited to be a lawyer for the Martians. I'm still stuck at my desk. But if what I was told you was true, and in the realm of possibility, you would wonder, what was it about this man, this opportunity, that made me walk away from everything? What did he promise me? Or, and maybe more likely, you would just think I had gone off the rails of the crazy train. Today's gospel story from the book of Mark begs us to ask these same questions, and to some might sound equally as crazy. I think Mark wants us to wonder, what was it about Jesus that made four men leave everything behind and follow him? Was it something he promised them? Was it who he was? What we will learn is Jesus' invitation to follow him comes with a sense of urgency, and answering that call, following him, is more important than anything. So let's go ahead and read today's gospel story found in Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 20. I will be reading from the English Standard Version. Passing alongside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on a little farther, he saw James the son of Zebedee and John his brother, who were in their boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and followed him. Allow me to share some context and explain a few things. Many of us read this story and form the impression that Peter and Andrew, James and John are out sitting on a bank dropping a line in the water, fishing for supper. Often we describe the disciples, later to become the 12 apostles, as a bunch of guys that weren't very smart with nothing better to do until Jesus said, "Follow me." This is simply inaccurate and, frankly, allows us to underestimate the impact of their decision to follow Jesus. The setting of our story is the Sea of Galilee. Fishing was a major industry. Fish from the Sea of Galilee were exported throughout the Roman Empire. Fishing for these four men wasn't a hobby or something they did to eke out a subsistence living. These men were likely firmly entrenched in the middle class. This was their career, their vocation. In fact, James and John left their father in the boat with other hired men. He had employees. They weren't sitting on the dock of the bay watching the time roll away. Next, Mark describes the story in a way that could give the impression this is the first time they met each other. This is not the case. Some scholars suggest that this encounter with Jesus happens after the events detailed in John chapter 1 and 2, when Jesus meets Peter, Andrew, and John, and later performs the miracle of turning water into wine. And the same John Jesus beckons to follow him in our story today writes, the disciples put their faith in him. The word "saw" in our passage suggests that Jesus had been seeing them or watching them or taking their measure for some period of time, as opposed to some chance meeting at the Sea of Galilee. Jesus' call was not random, it was intentional. Another unique thing about this story is that Jesus asked these men to follow him. Rabbis or teachers at that time would invite students to follow their teaching or interpretation of the law, but not to follow them. Here, Jesus, the newly revealed King of Kings, invites these men not to follow a teaching, an idea, but to follow him, the King, the Son of God, as has just been revealed to them. I think it is interesting what Jesus' invitation to follow him doesn't include. Jesus doesn't offer these men anything in exchange for their loyalty. Not wealth, not fame, not security, not status, not the normal things we would look for that might entice us to make such a life-changing decision. Jesus says, "Follow me, and I will teach you the most important job you could have." So what is the point of the story? For one, there is a sense of urgency to Jesus' invitation. Twice we see the disciples acted quickly, decisively, immediately. No dilly-dallying, no taking time to weigh the pros and cons, no talking to their life coach or mentor. They recognized the significance of Jesus' invitation and immediately responded. This story illustrates for us that following Jesus is more important than anything. These men left their careers, their livelihood, their families, without receiving a promise of anything in return other than Jesus' presence. They trusted Jesus enough. They recognized that they could place their very lives in Jesus' hands. As we contemplate the immediacy of the disciples' decision and what they left behind, I think we are supposed to feel some tension. I think we are supposed to feel uncomfortable. We have to ask ourselves, is Jesus the most important thing in our lives? Are we willing to drop everything to follow him? Or is he second to our family, our career, our activities? Essentially, we have to ask, are we all in? I'm reminded of the words in the hymn, "All to Jesus I surrender, all to him I freely give." Have we? What place does Jesus hold in your life? This week I invite all of us to wrestle with that tension. Have we put Jesus first in our lives? Do we trust Jesus enough to make him first in our lives? Do we follow Jesus just because of who he is, the King of Kings, Lord of Lords? Or do we have expectations about what Jesus will do for us? Read this verse. Pray about this verse. Let's ask for our eyes and hearts to be open to placing Jesus above everything else so that he can make us anglers in a sea of people ready to take the bait. God bless you. Have a great day.